Our first guest has been in attendance at the meetings between President Trump and Mexican President López Obrador. Joining us tonight is the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien. Robert, it's great to have you with us, and this is an extraordinary moment. Give us a sense of how those talks have gone, and at first, if you will, just the atmosphere and the tone between these two men.
Well, thank you for having me on, Lou. It's a very warm day here in Washington, and the warmth here outside the White House is matched by the warmth inside between the two presidents. The meetings have been extraordinarily cordial between the presidents and the two delegations. We're making a lot of progress on various issues, but President López Obrador and President Trump have really hit it off. You could see that earlier when they were in the Rose Garden together, and we have a great relationship with Mexico. As the president said, it's never been better. And what a fantastic visit by the president. I know you talked about monuments earlier. One of the nice things is that President López Obrador earlier this morning went out to the Lincoln Memorial and placed a wreath in front of Abraham Lincoln. And what a gesture of friendship and respect from a socialist president down in Mexico to come up and honor President Lincoln that way. We were very pleased to see that.
And he and the president share something else that's not often given much attention in at least the left-wing media, and that is both men are populists and believe strongly in their responsibilities to the people rather than, if you will, the commercial interest of their respective nations, even though both are pursuing better times for all as a result of their efforts to get more people employed. One of the things that most people have ignored here, Robert, as you know, is that these two men are operating as partners, as we have never seen in all of the time that I have been covering both Mexico and the United States. And that goes back to Salinas and the first Bush era. This is an extraordinary thing. And by the way, I frankly am astonished that the White House Communications Department, the Trump administration, the Trump campaign doesn't make more of the fact that these two men are operating as co-equals in battling the cartels, drugs, and building a new trade relationship.
No, 100%, Lou. When you said they had something in common, I thought you were going to say they both like baseball. So when they exchanged gifts earlier today, and it's a custom when a head of state comes, they often bring a gift for the president, and the president returns the gift. They exchanged baseball bats today. So the president signed and gave a custom Louisville Slugger to President López Obrador. President López Obrador gave the president a beautiful bat that had been manufactured by some indigenous people in southern Mexico, and they're both baseball fans as well. So, yeah, look, you're right about the partnership. I mean, nobody thought this would be possible. That President López Obrador said this. He said people wouldn't believe this. But when you look at what President Trump has done, he's built the wall. Immigration is down dramatically. Now, part of that is because of the wall. Part of it is also because the Mexicans have deployed 27,000 troops to their border. And why have they done that? Look, they don't want human traffickers on their border. They don't want narco traffickers on their border. They don't want illegal immigrants from conflict zones on their border. And so we've got a lot in common with Mexico. And of course, a lot of folks in the media would ignore that. But President López Obrador and President Trump are working together as partners. And I don't think we've ever had a better relationship, as you just mentioned. And you've been following this for a long time, Lou.
Indeed, and it's nice of you to point that out, Robert. The fact of the matter is that
since you were 12,
as we look at what is, God bless you for bailing me out. The fact of the matter is that both countries have an immense investment in one another. The fundamental idea behind NAFTA, when it was first created, and I was there for that moment as well, and series of moments. It was that the United States felt that if we were to enrich anyone, we should be enriching our neighbors first. That is Canada and, of course, Mexico, and that is precisely what has happened. Now, this is a more mature relationship, and the president is bringing greater balance, and López Obrador is working to ensure that the cartels meet their appropriate fate. Has there been much discussion about those cartels and what both countries can do to rid this hemisphere of them?
Well, it's the cartels aren't just in Mexico. And with respect to Mexico, Bill Barr, our Attorney General, has been down to Mexico City a couple of times in the last several months. And Mexico has began ever since those terrible murders of the American family in Mexico. They've extradited a number of cartel figures to the United States and have been cooperating closely with the DOJ and with Attorney General Barr. The other thing that we're doing, which Mexico truly appreciates, is the president deployed naval and Coast Guard assets and soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines to the Eastern Pacific down near Baja, California, and the Caribbean. Right. And we're interdicting tons and tons and tons of cocaine and marijuana, well over $2 billion of street value of drugs that we've interdicted over the past 3 or 4 months. Some of those drugs were actually going to Mexico. So we're doing a favor to the Mexicans, but to ourselves as well, and stopping those drugs that are coming in primarily from Venezuela. So again, that's another area of partnership between the U.S. and Mexico is interdicting drugs coming from the narco regime in Venezuela.
Any new initiatives between the two leaders that you can tell us about this evening?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been doing, I'm not sure it's new, but a lot of people don't know about it. And Mexico's been hit hard with COVID. We've been hit hard with COVID. And President Lopez Obrador has been very grateful to President Trump for the support that we've given our southern neighbor on the COVID crisis. We've sent down, I think, over 600 ventilators to Mexico to help with their ICU capacity. And both countries are sharing knowledge that they're gaining regarding the COVID virus. So we're working to come out of COVID, which came from China. It hit the whole Western Hemisphere. And we're working together to come out of that COVID crisis and strengthen both the Mexican and the American economy. And again, we're blessed to have neighbors like Canada and Mexico and have a great integrated market here in the Western Hemisphere. And as we move our supply chain home from China, Mexico and Canada will play a big role in that. So it's important to us.
Ambassador Robert O'Brien, always good to see you. Thanks for being with us.